Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Total War Warhammer 2, and today we're not playing the Skaven. Instead, we're playing the Followers of Nagash, who have, really since the release of the Tomb Kings, the Followers of Nagash have become one of my other favorite factions. They have a lot of stuff going for them. All the Tomb Kings stuff, plus, of course, the flexibility of also having unbreakable or, well, you know, undead, pseudo-unbreakable vampire counts units like the Crypt Ghouls, who are a very, very good infantry flanker. But in any case, I'm playing against the Skaven in this matchup, and in this matchup it's going to be interesting because we're going to talk about artillery, specifically the difference between Ushabti and Skaven artillery like the Plague Claw Catapult. So on my side, I know I'm going up against Skaven, obviously. I've got a unit of Fellbats hidden over here in the woods for scouting and harassment purposes. I've got Archon the Black on his chariot, his flying pimp chariot here, with two skeleton archer chariots backing him up. Skeleton chariots, I've done a lot of testing. Skeleton chariots are pound for pound the most damaging chariots in the game. They're also the most fragile. They're actually more fragile than Goblin Wolf chariots, but they do a ton of damage when they charge, and they can very easily and very quickly rout infantry units. Archon the Black, I brought him with his Tomb Blade, the Staff of Nagash, the Liber Mortis, so all of his powerful special abilities. He can spawn skeleton warriors, he can improve his recharge rate, and he can improve his recharge rate with that, and the Liber Mortis gives the 44% physical resist. He's got the Fate of Buna, Purple Sun, just in case I got a big blob of rats going, I wanted the Purple Sun, Doom and Darkness, and Spirit Leech for sniping out enemy heroes. He's also got My Will Be Done, and of course he's got his Curse. For my main line is fairly weak. It's mainly, I've got 3 Skeleton Spears up front, I've got the Kepra Guard, who are very, very good, and I've got one unit of Nekara Warriors. I have 1 Tomb Prince on a horse to stiffen my line a little bit, 1 Kemrian War Sphinx, always good against Skaven, 1 unit of Crypt Ghouls for infantry flanking, and I have 1 unit of Ushabti Great Bows for anti-artillery fire, because these guys are the best anti-artillery fire in the game, bar none. My opponent, of note, at this point I can see none of his units. I don't see nothing at the moment. He's got 2 units of Rat Ogres hidden in the woods, the front line of Clan Rats with shields, a Skaven Slave Slinger over there, 2 Storm Vermin Halberds, 1 Plague Claw Catapult, a Warlock Engineer, and his Warlock Engineer has, let me see, he's got the Doom Rocket, he's got Skitterleap, Crack's Call, Scorch, Howling Warp Gale, Warp Lightning, Warpstone Armor, and extra powder, so I think he's actually got pretty much everything, which isn't bad. He's still not expensive. He's got some Plague Monks back there. Did he only have 1 unit of Plague Monks? Yeah, just 1 unit. Queek Headtaker for his Lord, 2 units of Poison Wind Globadiers, and 1 Death Globe Bombardier. So at this moment, my main army is pulling back, because I'm going, okay, it's Skaven. I'm sure they have artillery, I just don't know where. So we're going to send the Chariots and the Bats forward to scout. The Bats didn't see him over here, so we're pulling them over in this direction, and there, the artillery starts to fire. But artillery firing at Chariots isn't going to do a whole lot. So Archon the Black and his Chariots going up into the woods. Now they see a little bit more of the enemy main body, and they're going to pull back. So I go, okay, so we've got 1 catapult that I can see. I saw no Warp Lightning Cannons or anything. So we're going to actually pull in the Ushabti Great Bows while leaving the mass of the army out of range. Because those Plague Call Catapults will absolutely wreck my infantry. But watch what happens when they go up against Ushabti. They're large targets. This is the thing about Skaven artillery in particular. I mean, all artillery are fairly large targets. Skaven artillery are bigger than most, and they also, I think, are weaker than most in terms of HP. So these Plague Claws, they're very, very vulnerable to damage, and Ushabti Great Bows are very accurate, move quickly, and they fire a lot of shots. So the Plague Claw Catapult, throwing in their bolts, they're doing some damage. I'm not saying they're not, but it's not going to be enough damage to matter all that much. Give me 1 second. Actually, no. I think my volume levels are okay. So the Ushabti Great Bows load up. They start firing, and first volley didn't seem like it really accomplished much. Everything's fine for the Rats. They're doing damage to the Ushabti. Looks like it's going well, right? They're clearly planning to try and force me to come to them. And then, boom. That's a piece down. They've lost 1/3 of their firepower. I've lost none. They fired their Doom Rocket, did a little bit of damage, but not a whole lot. My Bats just kind of flying around harassing them. And second volley, boom. They're down 2/3 of their artillery. Now the Skaven player sees the problem. Now he's starting to push up in a serious way. My bats are still just hovering here. I should have probably had them running away, but I just ignored them at this point. They're going to drop a Scorch on me, but Scorch is honestly not a very good spell. It's just not... Look at that. It did pretty much no damage, and this last artillery piece is barely hanging on here. They got about half their crew left and only one piece. And I dropped my bats down on these Deathglobe Bombardiers just to harass them a bit, in case they were in skirmish mode, and they were, so they're running. And that's the artillery gone. I now have the only artillery left on the field. Setting in the War Sphinx, and now my army can advance unimpeded. Swinging my chariots across away from those Storm Vermin, so they're going to come through here and bust through this side, while the Storm Vermin are kind of left over here just being infantry. These Clan Rats are absorbing some Ushabti shots, which they shouldn't be. I should be targeting something more valuable, but right now the Ushabti are actually... Actually, no, those aren't the Ushabti. Those are the chariots firing on them, which is fine. So now I've got the Kemrian War Sphinx in, and now Arkan is going to ride right through these guys. Boom. Big hit. 7 kills in an instant, and he is actually going to push through and keep going. While the chariots sit here and shoot. This is why I took the archer ones. I like having the option to sit and shoot for a second before I have to engage. And now in come the chariots to get a devastating charge on the Plague Monks. And look at that HP drop. Plague Monks hate this fight. Got the Crypt Ghouls coming in as well, so we've already collapsed those Clan Rats. Queek Headtaker is coming over, and they're also bringing in the Storm Vermin Halberds. But I don't have to stay here, so my chariots are starting to try to pull out. The Kemrian War Sphinx can fight Storm Vermin Halberds, it doesn't really care. And Arkan the Black is all the way back here beating up on the Deathglobe Bombardiers to make sure they can't really accomplish anything. Meanwhile, the Kemrian War Sphinx is getting out of dodge. Looks like a nice Cracks Call lined up right here. Yep, that did some real damage to the Kepler Guard. No wonder my infantry collapsed so quick. In the battle, I didn't even really see that. These guys are pulling back. Meanwhile, over here, my Ushabti have been running from the Rat Ogres, but I see the Rat Ogres coming, so this is why I'm pulling back the Skeleton Archer Chariots and the Kemrian War Sphinx. Rat Ogres do a lot of armor-piercing damage, however, they also have a very low armor. So the Skeleton Archer Chariots aren't going to charge into melee, they're actually going to sit and shoot, while these Spearmen come back to help. The Ushabti Great Bows haven't lost any models still, and now with those arrows coming in, and the Kemrian War Sphinx, look at the damage these Rat Ogres are taking. It's pretty significant. They're getting pretty beat up on. They've only killed one Ushabti so far, and honestly, I'd be happy to trade this Ushabti for those Rat Ogres. Arkan the Black up to 30 kills, rampaging around at the back lines, causing havoc. My Crypt Ghouls are beating up on Queek. The Storm Vermin cannot beat Crypt Ghouls. With Queek's help, they might be able to, but I summoned in some chaff there. The Kepler Guard are still not dead. They're just that tough, and in fact, they are regenerating. While my Tomb Prince and my Nehekar Warriors are chewing up the Warlock Engineer. We've got Routing Infantry over there. My Spearmen are holding these guys off. In the back, I still have 6 Ushabti. I've routed both of the Rat Ogres as my Skeleton Spearmen arrive. The arrow damage from those Skeleton Archer Chariots, pretty significant in this circumstance. Ushabti are crumbling, unfortunately, so that's a problem. He's getting a lot of good Poison Wing Globadier fire on my Tomb Prince, but I don't really care all that much about the Tomb Prince dying. Like, if the Tomb Prince dies, worse things have happened. In here, we've got first an Ushabti summon, and then we've got the this Archer Chariot charge. Unfortunately, I didn't realize this would happen, but the Ushabti actually stopped my own charge, so I didn't get to hit the Poison Wing Globadiers. So, instead we're going to bull over here and run over these Storm Vermin Halberds. Yes, they are anti-large infantry, but when you've got 3 units like this charging, it doesn't really matter, they just break anyway. In the back, Arkan the Black still running wild. Hulkamania going wild on them, as they say. My other Skeleton Archer Chariot is coming back. These Rat Ogres are being murdered by spears. That unit is broken. My chariots have pulled out with relatively little damage just from moving fast. The Warlock Engineer is broken. My Tomb Prince is still alive. Those Nehekar Warriors are going to get onto the Poison Wing Globadiers. And here, the Kepler Guard, still alive, are being rescued by another unit of chariots. Those chariots, man, they are fantastic. In the back, my Ushabti Great Bows have succumbed, unfortunately. And at that point, my opponent quits the game. So here's the interesting thing to take away from that. My opponent came into this game with a plan. It was actually a pretty decent plan. For Skaven, the plan to sit there and let your artillery do the work is a good one. However, it's not going to work against the Tomb Kings because Great Bow Ushabti are fantastic anti-artillery. These guys are amazing at killing artillery pieces. I've done a lot of tests. Ushabti Great Bows, one-on-one, can kill pretty much any artillery unit in the game. Dwarven cannons, they beat, albeit they take pretty heavy casualties doing so. They beat the Hammer of the Witches. They certainly beat any Skaven artillery piece. You just can't outshoot them. Even if you start out of range, you won't start far out of range if they deploy forward. And with any terrain or any cover or anything, they will get in range and they will start destroying your artillery pieces. And they're accurate enough and they fire enough projectiles to do it pretty rapidly, within a few volleys. So that being so, if you're going to try to win artillery duels against the Tomb Kings, you have to bring a lot of artillery. And that means that the rest of your army will be weak in some different way, and they'll be able to crumple you. The other thing of note in my army is that the Kepra Guard did so well. They got hit by that Cracks Call and lost like 70% of their HP instantly. They still got 70 kills. They still chewed through an entire unit and then another one, and then went on to help break they were rocking and rolling. I was super impressed. The chariots caused a lot of disruption, and the fact that they are archer chariots was integral in countering the rat ogres. I think it's worth taking the archer variant. It doesn't seem like they do a lot of damage, but against targets like this specifically, it's worthwhile. Also, I believe they can actually outrun and skirmish with slow cavalry, which can be very useful at certain times. Let's actually jump into custom battle real quick and take a look at that. Because I think that is true. Take a look at their speed stat real quick. Let's go Tomb Kings. Followers of Nagash is fine. Speed 74. Yeah, they can outrun some heavy cavalry. So if heavy cavalry is chasing you, these guys do have 360-degree arc of fire, so you can actually shoot on the move with them. And like I said, their missile damage is not super impressive, but a lot of it is armor piercing and they reload very quickly. So when you're firing every 10 seconds, you're firing 18 shots, it adds up. It does add up pretty well. And honestly, these are fantastic. Like, these are what chariots should be. They're not very durable. You have to babysit them. But if you do babysit them, they can be extremely effective at disrupting your enemy line. Also, because they have 9 models instead of 3 or 6, they plow through enemy infantry very easily, because they can hit the whole unit and knock the whole unit over, which lets them push on through without being stopped. So, chariots, very good. I've never really used skeleton horseman archers. They're not great skirmish cavalry. And if you're going to take chariots, you might as well pay the extra 100 to have the missile attack, because like I said, it's useful. And otherwise, they have exactly the same stats. It's just these guys also get a bow for 100 extra gold. If you're going to counter the Tomb Kings as the Skaven, or the followers of Nagash as Skaven, Lore of Ruin is great. Lore of Plague is actually possibly better in this matchup. I mean, the Lore of Ruin and its damage is always good. Warp Lightning is always good and such, but one of the main values of the Lore of Ruin is Howling Warp Gale, and the other anti-flying abilities, which you don't need against the Tomb Kings. The Tomb Kings do not have any powerful flying units. So probably I would go Plague, so either Skrulk or the Grey Seer of Plague. Probably in this matchup you might as well take Skrulk. The Tomb Kings aren't going to be able to goon... Well, the Tomb Kings have monsters that can goon you pretty easily, but they also have a lot of good anti-large. So you probably do not want the Bell against the Tomb Kings. So I'd probably go ahead and take Skrulk. Pestilent Birth and not Wither. Vermintide, both really good. Plague situational. It's a good damage spell at clearing out chaff, but you shouldn't have much trouble clearing out Tomb King's chaff. The big problem is going to be the monsters. So I'd probably leave Plague behind. Pestilent Breath you might as well have. It's cheap. Blessed with Filth, the same. Wither, definitely. You definitely want that, and then both summons. Then, of course, with Skrulk, you take both items, and you take all his abilities. After that, you need a little bit of infantry damage, but you don't need to focus on it. What you mainly need is effective anti-large. I would take some artillery. I would take a Warp Lightning Cannon, maybe 2. But you have to resign yourself to the fact that you're going to have to proactively defend those cannons. You're going to have to force the Ushabti to stay out of range or to turn their fire on something else. So in this battle, the Skaven are going to be the aggressors. Fortunately, the Tomb Kings don't have much by way of effective flankers, so you can probably just put a Clanrat Spear with shield guarding your Warp Lightning Cannon or something. and then take, you know, a pretty standard chaffy front line. I would take a Storm Vermin Halberd or two, just in case. You might also consider a Death Runner. Having a Death Runner in there will definitely help reduce the armor of those big constructs to such an extent that your infantry can hurt them effectively. Plague Monks, probably unnecessary, but if you wanted to, you could cut out one of those and have a couple of Plague Monks. You will want Poison Wind Globadiers. You may also want Slingers, or Gutter Runners Skirmishers, because those guys are fantastic counters to Chariots. Chariots are very, very missile vulnerable, at least the Tomb King's Chariots are, and Gutter Runners put out a lot of missile damage very quickly, because they have, not only is their missile damage decent in and of itself, I mean, it's, you know, 11 with 3 AP, which isn't bad for a missile, but they fire 90 shots per volley. So a unit of Gutter Runners can very easily take out 1 or 2 Chariots out of the unit with every volley. And that stuff adds up quick. So I would probably want a Gutter Runner. If I was optimizing this army, I'm going to take the Plague Monks out, actually, and just put in another, you know, chaffy frontline unit. I am probably going to take a couple of Gutter Runners. Poison is ideal. Drop one of those guys, and then take a couple of Rat Ogres. You definitely want Rat Ogres because they have the armor piercing, and they have the mass to stop cavalry, chariots, and monsters from just running rampant through your lines. So something like this. What you may also want, actually, is you probably want an Assassin with the Rivalhide Talisman. At least one, possibly two, if you think you can afford two. So I might take out one of the Gutter Runners to afford that, and then spend the rest of the money on chevrons for the front line, just to give them a little bit more leadership. So something like this would probably be the way I would try to counter Tomb Kings, because they don't have a whole lot of flying units. They do have some cavalry and flankers. They have unbreakable infantry. They do have the Ushabti summon, and the Ushabti summon will be nasty. So you kind of have to decide whether you want one of these guys guarding your cannon or one of these guys guarding your cannon. I might leave the Storm Vermin Halberd. That's kind of my standard. But you have the tools in this army to counter all those large units and also to do pretty significant anti-infantry damage. I think this is the way I would go. So in any case, thanks for watching. It was a very interesting battle. Thank you to my opponent for playing. Hope to see you around again sometime soon. And I will talk to you all later on. Take care.